Hello friends, good morning. In, in our previous lecture, we discussed Robert Browning's dramatic monologue, My Last Justice. We did a textual analysis, and today we'll make a comparative study of Duke and Duchess, the two main characters of Robert Browning's My Last Duchess. Browning's poetry is rich in the presentation of human character in its wide and varied aspects. He was keenly and deeply interested in all human beings and he picked up for his poetic treatment men and women from the highest to the lowest category. It is said that Shakespeare was the dramatist of humanity and his dramas take in their fold all classes and types of human beings. Browning's range of human life is only next to Shakespeare. The men and women who live and move in the new world of his creation are as varied as life itself. There are kings and beggars, saints and lovers, great painters and musicians, dukes and duchesses, princes, gypsies, etc. Browning's chief objective as artist and poet is to make a meticulous prop into human soul. Browning is inordinately eager to know what a man really is. Browning was interested not in the mass of men and women, but in the life of individuals. Individual men and women and their prominently marked and extraordinary traits of character gripped his fancy. His chief interest lay in the presentation of the soul of human beings. He fixed his thoughts on the soul of man and peered into all the nook and corners of the soul with great interest and insight. He was interested in the inner drama of the individual soul. All these traits of characterization can be clearly seen in his character portrayal of Duke and Duchess in his famous dramatic monologue My Last Duchess, which is a mysterious monologue about the Duke of Ferrara who is showing off a portrait of his late wife to a visitor of his home. Although while showing this portrait of his last duchess, the Duke chooses his words carefully, he ends up telling the visitor more than he realizes. By doing so, he not only reveals information about his former wife, but he sheds light on his own character, including possibly admitting to her murder. The Duke in real life is supposed to be Alfonso II, the fifth Duke of Ferrara, and the Duchess is supposed to be Lucrezia de Medici, whom the Duke married in 1588. We can discuss their characters under the following heads. First, we will discuss the character of the Duchess and then the Duke. The first point that immediately strikes us while delineating or depicting the character of the Duchess is she was beautiful, shy, and young. In spite of the Duke's rather untrustworthy opinion of the Duchess, we can infer a number of physical and other attributes from what he says about her. It is pertinent that she was beautiful and that he wanted to celebrate her allure by having her portrait done by a renowned artist. When he discusses the painting, he mentions her blushing not only because he was there, but also because of a remark the painter from Pendolph made while executing his task. This suggests that she was somewhat shy and probably easily embarrassed by a compliment or by seeing her husband perusing her and the painting being crafted by the artist. The Duke, however, seems offended since he believes she was too easily pleased. He says, she had a heart. How shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. Next quality which strikes us is she is a happy person. It is obvious that the Duchess was a happy person who easily derived satisfaction from even the smallest things. The Duke, though resented this, he refused to accept that she found enjoyment in the things around her. He states, she liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. So it was all one. This indicates towards another quality of Duchess. She was soft, impartial, and of polite nature. The Duke obviously hated the idea of her treating everything the same. She was evidently not one to discriminate and be biased. But he hated the idea that she did not give him any special attention and regarded him with the same kind of devotion that she gave to everything else. Duke says, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech or blush at least. Now, we find that the Duchess is kind and generous. She was very kind, and it is especially her approval and shows of gracious appreciation to other men that irritated him the most, as he said, she thanked me good, but thanked somehow I know not how. Duchess was also humble and innocent. The Duke believed that the Duchess should have valued the gift of his esteemed and obviously historically significant name more than anything else, which apparently she did not. This shows that the Duchess was not impressed by a title or a name and that she was humble and innocent. Some people regard that she was proud and stubborn also. It is also quite clear that the Duchess was both proud and stubborn, for it appears that the Duke had admonished her for being so generous in her praise and approval, but she did not change her character. The Duke seems to believe that he embarrassed himself by having to rebuke her about something that he believed should have been self-evident. He had to stoop, but would have preferred if she had been the one to stoop and go to his authority and follow his instruction. The Duke's frustration at what he deemed his wife's unacceptable behavior became intolerable. Her behavior in his mind worsened and he could not take her impudence any longer. He gave instruction that led to a complete cessation of all her generosity. The suggestion is that he had her killed. He says, this is true. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. Now we come to the character of Duke. Loosely based on historical events involving Alfonso the Duke of Ferrara, who lived in the 16th century, My Last Duchess provides a classic example of a dramatic monologue, the revelation of the Duke's character being the poem's primary aim. The first thing that we find noticeable in the character of Duke is that he is a combination of villain as well as aesthete. In My Last Duchess, the combination of villain and aesthete in the Duke creates an especially strong tension. What interests us more than the Duke's wickedness is his immense attractiveness, his conviction of matchless superiority, his intelligence and bland amorality, his poise, his taste for art, his high-handed aristocratic manners. All these qualities overwhelm the envoy, causing him as well as the reader apparently to suspend judgment of the Duke. We are busy trying to understand the man who can combine the connoisseur's pride in the lady's beauty with a pride that caused him to murder the lady rather than tell her in what way she displeased him. For in that would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. The Duke's paradoxical nature is fully revealed when, having boasted how at his command the Duchess's life was extinguished, he turns back to the portrait to admire of all things its lifelikeness. There she stands as if alive. We find Duke as a conceited person. The conceited nature of Duke is revealed when he tells his listener, "That's my last duchess painted on the wall." He is proud and is boasting about the many duchesses he had in his life. He refers to its earnest glance. It appears he is speaking about an object rather than a person he loved. The Duke provides us with a grumbling list of his duchess' unfaithfulness and ungratefulness. The Duke is also quite money-minded and of greedy nature. The next lines produce a series of shocks, for it is at this point we learn to whom he has been talking, and he goes on to talk about Dowry, even allowing himself to murmur the hypocritical assurance that the new bride herself and not the dowry is of course his object. Then there is the lordly waving of ranks privilege as the Duke and the envoy are about to proceed downstairs. And then there is a perfect, all revealing gesture of the last 2.5 lines when the Duke stops to show off yet another object in his collection. The possessive egoist counts up his possessions even as he moves towards the acquirement of a new possession, a well-dowered bride, and most importantly, the last duchess is seen in final perspective. She takes her place in one of a line of objects in an art collection. The Duke has taken from her what he wants, her beauty, and thrown the life away, and we watch in awe as he proceeds to take what he wants from the envoy and by implication from the new duchess. Now, he is jealous and possessive. The way the Duke keeps the painting of his last duchess behind a curtain is evidence of his jealous, controlling nature that regards women as possessions not meant to be shared by others. Throughout the poem, Browning sets the Duke's jealousy and reputation against the suspected promiscuity of his last duchess. The Duke's jealousy and his arrogance are shown in his attitude towards his family name, representative of his social station. He resents that the Duchess appreciated a sunset or a cherry bough as much as she valued taking his name. The Duke was not only afraid of losing her, we also get the impression that he is more concerned over the loss of control over her. The Duke was quite proud of his ancestry. He reveals his arrogance by stating, "As if she rang my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift." His vanity and pride are obvious her as he speaks of his noble heritage and how the Duchess did not seem to respect this gift he has given her. He expected her to be proud of the name she acquired through him. His sense of superiority and his haughty attitude are obvious. Now, some people feel that Duke is no better than a monster. He is a murderer. Objectively, it is easy to identify the Duke as a monster since he had his wife murdered for what come across as fairly innocuous behavior. Throughout the dramatic monologue, the Duke reveals his pride, his vanity, and his need for control. His arrogance and jealousy stem from his aristocratic ancestry, and we, the audience, see him as a shallow human being unable to ever show true love to his duchesses. And yet, the ironic disconnect that colors most of Browning's monologues is particularly strong here. A remarkably immoral man has a lovely sense of beauty and oratory skill. The chilling is inherent in the structure of the poem. As the irony is decoded, the Duke and the Duchess appear just the opposite to what the Duke poses to reveal about himself and his last wife. Thus, Browning's poems are studies of the character, they are studies of the other men. The poet stands apart and gives his characters a platform and let them speak to us. And as they speak, they unfold their character. The author keeps himself entirely in the background, and so it is essentially dramatic. The monologue is essentially a lyrical outpouring or a subjective self examination of the speaker. Thank you.